Today I'm going to show you how you can turn your trash into fertilizer. What is composting? It is the natural breakdown of organic material right into soil and fertilizer. Making compost is really easy because all the work is carried out by nature. Composting turns your trash into something really useful, and we're talking about your kitchen waste such as your vegetable scraps, your fruit peels, your old newspaper, your cardboard, your empty toilet paper roll, your junk mail. All these things can be broken down into fertilizer to grow strong and healthy plants. We have bokashi composting that can be done completely indoors. We have a composting tumbler that is usually used in a backyard or a garden. We have vermicomposting, which means worm composting. These worms, they consume the waste and then they poop out one of the highest quality fertilizers out there. And this type of fertilizer, it's actually used to maintain golf courses. There's just so many methods out there, but today I'm just going to zoom in on the easiest and cheapest method, and that is called DIY, do-it-yourself composting. In composting, you need these 4 elements: food, air, warmth, and moisture, just like you and me. And that's because composting is largely dependent on living microscopic organisms. And these little microscopic organisms, they need food, air, warmth, and moisture to thrive. So in this DIY composting method, I'm going to show you how to make these 4 things happen. First thing on the list, we need food. Now food is broken down into greens and browns. Browns are dry paper products such as your old newspaper, your junk mail, cardboard, egg cartons made of cardboard, your empty toilet paper rolls. These help to soak up excess moisture in your bin, and not only that, they help to create air spaces in your bin. Greens are the complete opposite of browns. They contain wet and moist material, they are very quick to rot, and not only that, they help to provide important nitrogen and moisture inside your compost pile. There are many types of greens. We have your kitchen scraps, which are your carrot peels, your carrot tops, apple cores, lemon skin, orange skin. All these are considered greens for your compost pile. Tea bags can also be used as a green in your compost pile. And that goes the same for used coffee grounds. Now for a more comprehensive list on the types of greens and browns, or even things that you shouldn't add to your compost bin, do check out our website. So that's the first point about food, your greens and your browns. Now the second point, air. These living microscopic organisms need air to breathe and to thrive. And in order to create air, scrunched up newspaper, your empty toilet paper rolls, these will help to introduce air into your bin. Now we highly recommend not to cover your bin with a lid because that would cut off the oxygen supply from your compost pile. But if you're worried about small flies and all that, it's completely fine. You can cover with a lid, but do remember to open it up and mix in your compost pile once to twice a week, and that should do the trick. Don't stir your compost bin too often because of the third point, warmth. The living microscopic organisms need warmth to thrive. And that is why we shouldn't stir our bin too often because it dissipates heat out of your compost bin. We recommend placing your bin in partial sun where you can get some warmth and heat, but not under direct sun because the high temperatures will kill your living microscopic organisms. So we've covered food, air, warmth, and do you remember the final essential that's needed for composting? That would be moisture. That's right. So your bin needs moisture for composting to go well, and this can be simply done with water. Your compost pile, when it's too wet, it will be anaerobic, it will be kind of smelly and icky. There might be flies, so that would be a problem. Now, a compost pile that is too dry will also have a problem. And the problem will be the complete opposite. Basically, it will be an inactive pile. It's going to be really slow, but there are simple fixes for each of them. So let's talk about the first one, a compost bin that has become icky and smelly because it is too wet. Do you know how to fix that problem? You could simply mix in one important ingredient, and that is your greens or browns. That is your browns, okay? Because your browns are the dry material and they help to control the moisture in your pile. So if you find that your bin is too wet, it's starting to smell, simply mix in more browns such as your newspaper or your empty toilet paper rolls. Now, what about a bin that is too dry and nothing's going on? Very simple. Just add in some water or even mix in some greens such as your kitchen vegetable scraps. I would just like to share 3 tips with you. The first one is shred up your greens into smaller pieces. So for example, if you're gonna put in one huge cabbage in there, it's just gonna take a really long while to break down. But if you were to chop up the cabbage into smaller pieces, then the process will be a lot faster. Tip number 2. If you're composting for the first time, I would recommend you to add more browns into your compost pile, because the browns will help to manage the moisture in your bin. Tip number 3, if your family loves to cook and generates a lot of kitchen scraps and fruit peels, I recommend you to get a bigger bin, because the more amount of material you can compost, the faster the process. And that's also why a tiny compost bin with very little material will not compost as fast as a big bin with a lot of material. And I do have one kind of secret tip to share with you, and it might be a little bit strange sounding, but here it is, okay? If you start to get smells and you don't know what to do about it, I recommend you to get hay. Simply fill the top of your compost pile with hay and all the smells will be miraculously and instantly gone. And do you know why? Because hay is a natural biofilter. Are you ready to create your very first compost bin? Let's get cracking. First and foremost, you need a moderate-sized bin just like this one, and I really like it because it's kind of translucent. I can see what's going on inside the bin at any time. There are some holes drilled at the bottom to allow excess moisture from the bin to come out. Having holes at the bottom is more for beginners who are trying composting for the first time. But if you're confident, I don't think holes are necessary as long as you can control the amount of moisture that goes inside your bin. Hello, can you hear me? Now the next thing you will need would be items to prop your bin off from the ground. I have 3 plastic pots that I use to grow small plants. I'm actually going to reuse them for this purpose, which is to be the prop uppers for my compost bin, like that. And then next, you will need your mix of greens and browns. So over here, I've got some examples of greens and browns specially prepared for you. Now, do you still remember what the browns are? They are mostly products that will help to control the moisture in your compost pile. Paper bag, some cardboard over here, old newspapers as well, empty toilet paper rolls. Now what about greens? Very simple. I prepared a tub of greens over here. Let me show you a quick close-up. These are very common ingredients that are usually thrown away when you prepare food in the kitchen. And of course, some water for sprinkling. And then we also have Compost Starters. Compost starters are very, very effective to jumpstart the composting process inside your bin. In this case, I'm just using garden soil because garden soil already have very beneficial microorganisms that can be introduced into your compost pile. Now, if you don't want to stick your fingers into soil, it's okay. You can also use used coffee grounds. Microorganisms in your compost pile will need some warmth, right? So I would suggest adding newspapers at the top of your compost bin so that you can help to keep the heat inside your compost pile. And of course, something that has been really important to me ever since I started composting would be a label for your bin. When I first started composting, I was leaving my bin outside the home to compost. A really kind cleaner helped me to empty the whole bin. I had to restart the whole process again. So be sure to label your bin so that it will not be mistaken as a regular rubbish bin. Other optional materials that you might want to use would be a garden spade, just like this one. Okay, so that you don't have to use your hands to dig into the compost pile. You might also want to have 2 bins instead of 1, so that when the first one is completely filled up, you can actually leave it aside to compost, and then you can use your second compost bin to fill up your new kitchen scraps or your new household wastes. And of course, I would recommend you to get your own potted plants, because if you aren't growing your own plants by now, I think this would be a great way to start. Let's do it! Shredded newspaper first. So put all these at the bottom so that they can help to soak up excess moisture inside your bin. And then you can proceed to add your greens. Sprinkle in your compost starter. As much as possible, because you want to be able to coat and cover all your greens with this compost starter. So mix it well. Coat all your greens with the compost starter as if you're salting it with really good stuff, the microorganisms from the compost starter. And then add your browns. I like to use MV toilet paper rolls because of their shape and structure. They help to create air gaps inside the compost pile so that there's enough oxygen for the living microorganisms to thrive. Now, because they will take up quite a lot of space, I will shred them up. They will still retain their structure, so there will be air gaps inside the compost bin. You would probably want to aim for a 50-50 mix of greens and browns. But if you're composting for the first time, I recommend adding more browns than greens so that the compost pile will be more manageable. I've got an empty paper bag that has been used before, so I'm just gonna shred it up and I'm gonna scrunch it up to introduce air pockets. And over here I have some cardboard as well. This compost pile is very likely to have more browns than greens, because if I were to compare the volume of greens and browns that I added, I know that I added a lot more browns than greens. So I will expect this compost pile to be quite slow and inactive in breaking down, but it's okay. It can be easily fixed by adding more greens or adding more water. And you know what? You can add even more coffee grounds to continue to speed up the whole composting process. So we're gonna mix it up right now. Make sure that the greens and the browns are evenly spaced, and the browns are also creating air gaps in between the greens. So now let's recap, okay? We have food, which is the greens and the browns. We have air, where the browns come in to create air gaps in the pile. The third one is warmth, okay? But warmth, we will keep it to the last. Now, what about the fourth one? The fourth one is moisture. So as I mentioned earlier, this pile that I created is very brown heavy. So it's gonna be pretty slow in breaking down. So it's very important to add some water to make sure that it could compost more effectively. I'm gonna add some water over here. Okay. Okay, then after adding water, you can just mix again. So how do we keep this compost pile warm? Very simple. You can put it under partial sun but not under direct heat because it would kill the microorganisms in our compost pile. There's also another way to keep it warm, and that is simply by using a layer of old newspapers. So you can simply put it over the pile like that. Okay? As if you are covering it with a blanket. You can even cover with a lid. It's fine, but remember that your compost pile will need oxygen. So if you want to keep it airtight, do remember to remove the lid and mix your compost pile about once to twice a week. And remember to label your bin. Now, do you still remember these things that I was showing you earlier? Do prop up your bin if you have holes below your bin so that the excess moisture can easily come out. You can use stones, bricks, basically anything that helps you to prop your bin off from the ground. And remember to keep the area around your bin clean and dry so that you can reduce pests from being attracted to your bin. And there you have it, your very first DIY compost bin. Congratulations! What if your compost bin is only partially filled just like this bin and you have got new kitchen scraps to add inside your bin? Is there a way to do it? Yes, there is, and I'm going to show you how. It's very logical. First and foremost, you're going to remove the insulating layer of newspaper, and then you're going to add your new kitchen scraps. Simply just add them all. Now, do you still remember the next step? Going to add a good amount of it because the more the better. So give them a good mix, and then we are going to add the same amount of browns. And then we're going to add our moisture. In this case, we're going to add some water. Then we're going to give them a good mix. You can then top it up with your insulating layer. And there you have it, a very simple way to top up your compost bin with new material. Where should you place your DIY compost bin? I recommend it to be placed outdoors or semi-outdoors where there is a drain for the excess moisture to come out. Now, how do you know that your compost is ready? It's very simple. You will not be able to recognize any of the original material in your compost bin. Basically, the whole thing will just look like soil and smell like soil. Now, how do you use your compost when it's ready? Very simple. Simply add a layer of compost on the top of your plant soil as if you're covering it with a blanket, and then add water. The second way would be to mix your compost directly with your plant soil. Not only that, you can use your finished compost as compost starters for your next compost pile. Alright, that's it. We've come to the end of the composting video. If you'd like to watch more of these composting videos, click the subscribe button so that you'll be notified of new composting content coming your way. If you wish to purchase any of these cool stuff in the video, check out the links I've provided in the description box below. Any questions? Get in touch on our website or Facebook page. Thank you so much for watching, and happy composting!